MS Now Capitol Hill reporter Kevin Fry is reporting from Washington. Mark McKinnon is a former advisor to George W. Bush, John McCain, and creator of the documentary series The Circus. Susan Wild is a former Democratic congresswoman from Pennsylvania. Good to have all of you here. Kevin, MS Now is reporting that President Trump called Senate Majority Leader John Thune on Friday and gave him a heads up about this potential endorsement of the congresswoman. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, and Thune was notably campaigning with Cassidy just within the last few days down in Baton Rouge. Now, according to the source that was talking to our team, Thune tried to talk Trump out of this move, noting that, of course, that Cassidy is a key vote and has been rather loyal in his voting record over the course of the last year. But it goes without saying that these two, as you hinted at the top, have had a bit of an interesting, shall we say, political life over the past decade or so, because of course, Cassidy was one of those key votes to try to punish him in light of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. He was one of the handful of Republicans that voted to convict during his second impeachment trial. But since Trump has returned to office, we have also seen Cassidy step in line with the president, most notably deciding to vote to advance RFK Jr. to be the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary, despite his concerns about Kennedy's past comments and record when it comes to vaccines. Cassidy, of course, is a doctor by trade. And most notably, in just the last couple of weeks, we have seen Cassidy be kind of out front in trying to advocate for some of the health care reforms that President Trump has voiced his support for, including transforming those enhanced subsidies into money that goes into HSA or private individual accounts to individual recipients. Obviously, that bill has not come to fruition as yet, but he was trying to work in lockstep with the White House to try to realize that vision.
So, Mark, the head of the Senate Leadership Fund, a Republican super PAC, told this to the Washington Post, quote, "Anything that distracts from our efforts to beat Democrats in November is unhelpful." How big a deal could this be?
Well, it's unhelpful. It's a distraction in what is likely to be a very close election, perhaps even in the Senate. And, I mean, that's a very safe Republican seat in Louisiana. There's no need to create a primary problem that will, at the very least, drain needed funds for other races. And this is just a classic example of the irony that Donald Trump demands unconditional loyalty, which Cassidy has now conferred by his vote to support RFK and recent health reforms, but it's never enough. And so, once again, Trump has showed that you can offer me unconditional loyalty, but you're not going to get it in return.
So, Congresswoman, even if Democrats face long odds, if they want to go into Louisiana, this is a deep red state. Trump won by 22 points there, but polls in the latter part of 2025 show that Donald Trump's popularity there is waning. Could this give them any leverage at all, do you think, in Louisiana? Is it any reason at all, for example, for some Democrats to support the opponent?
Well, I'm not a campaign advisor, but if I were one, that's not something that I would recommend to a Democratic candidate. I don't see that as a likely winnable race. I think that the fact that if I were a Republican, I'd be worried about the primary because no party likes to see a competitive primary, especially against an incumbent. And I think it's sort of a sad statement because Senator Cassidy has been one of the few senators who has shown a streak of independence. I was disappointed by his RFK vote, but otherwise has shown a decent amount of independence. And I know Julia Letlow from the House, and I'm a little disappointed that she's apparently decided to hitch her wagon to Donald Trump's whatever, and pledge eternal loyalty to him, because otherwise she wouldn't have gotten his endorsement. So overall, I don't see it as a positive at all. But I wouldn't tell a Democrat that I liked to get into that race.
So, Mark, James Carville, in the big picture, made a pretty bold midterm prediction to Fox News over the weekend. Take a listen.
I'm looking at the 2026 elections, and frankly, it's going to be a wipeout. Your viewers need to know that the Democrats are going to pick up at a minimum 25 seats, maybe as high as 45. Wow. In all likelihood, the Democrats will carry the Senate.
Is there anything you're seeing that would support that, especially when it comes to the Senate?
Everything. Yeah. Listen, I did my very first campaign with Carville about a half century ago, and he's usually right. And not only is he usually right on this projection, but history's right. Only twice in the last 100 years has the political party that holds the presidency held the House, and the average seats that they lose is 25 in a good year. And at the very, this is not going to be a good year for Republicans. It may be modest losses, but it's not going to be a good year. So I think you can expect at least the average, which is Carville is predicting.
So, Congresswoman, I have to ask you about this new Wall Street Journal poll. It shows 58% of voters have an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party, compared with only 39% favorable. And when asked which party in Congress is best able to handle issues, voters favored Republicans by 6 points on both the economy and inflation, 11 points on immigration, 28 points on border security. So what should Democrats be looking at over the next, 8 months or so when they're running for office? And what should they be worried about?
Well, I think, first of all, Democrats should not be listening to James Carville anymore. I used to agree with a lot of what he said. I still agree with something he said a long time ago, which is it's the economy stupid. And I think there's a lot to be seeing in the next 8 months in terms of what's going to happen with the economy. I think that Democrats would be crazy to take their eye off the ball or to take anything for granted. And listen, I came in 2018. We needed 23 seats to take back the majority, and we got 41, which was awesome. And maybe that will happen again. But Democrats should not by any means take their foot off the accelerator. And those who support them need to realize it's still going to be a very tough year all the way around. Those numbers about unfavorability for Democrats are very concerning. And, I think we probably lead maybe on the subject of health care right now. But there are a lot of things that we should be leading on. And I really, really would encourage Democrats to get away from just trying to take these safe, predictable positions that frankly bore the voters that we are trying to attract to our party. Do everything you can to lean in on issues that are super important to people of color, to younger voters, and of course, always to senior voters, because they are an important part of the Democratic constituency. But I think that Democrats should continue to run as hard as they can and assume that they will be within a hair of taking back the majority.